Good afternoon. It is Touch Taste Thursday, Season 6, Episode 1. I am your host, Rebecca with a K. As usual, I am here with oh man, like you guys don't even understand like how amazing tonight's show is gonna be. I'm gonna have my dad on. All right, come on. Make sure you guys are jumping on in. Make sure you like, you comment, you share. Make sure you're telling people about Touch Taste Thursday is back. I'm going to get Dad on. I think we got it. We're going to get it started. I'm excited. If y'all know my daddy, y'all know that he is definitely a character. He is 100% a character, just like me. And yeah, so again, this is Touch Taste Thursday. I am Rebecca with a K, your host of the G&L at Home and Lifestyle Collection. And this is Season 6. Hey! So, all right, make sure, let's see. All right. And you share. So we're going to let him on in. And, you know, in the year of 2023 of our Lord, the saints still trying to figure out social media, Jesus. So there we go. Oh, there we go. You got to turn it a little bit, Daddy.
You look like it now.
You got to turn it. We live.
Well, what you want me to do? What can I say?
Turn your camera. Turn it the other way.
Turn it the other way?
The other way, yes. The upside down.
They go to show you.
There we go.
There we go. Huh? Well, you should have put it up another way.
There we go. Now we cooking with high grease.
Well, grease may be hot, I tell you.
Welcome to Touch Taste Thursday, Diddy.
Well, thank you, Rebecca with a K. I appreciate you inviting me to be a part of your August list of luminaries and leaders. Thank you so very much for the thought and to have this opportunity to be with you.
Absolutely. All of that sounds real good, but thank you for coming. So we are going to just have a casual conversation. I have some questions, of course. You know, my questions are pretty good. And then it's just, you know, we're just going to talk about you and talk about your life and who you are and the accomplishments that you have over the course of your life. And it's going to be really good. All right?
I hope so.
All right. So let's get started. So let's talk about.
Excuse me, I'll be back. Okay, there I am. Okay, go ahead.
Wait a minute now. Okay, so let's talk about growing up in New Orleans in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Like, what was that like?
It was different. It was a wonderful time to be alive. A wonderful time to be a part of the New Orleans fabric and scene. Things were changing. The community was changing. Being a part of that experience for those years of the beginning of the movement, you know, from the early 60s, being a part of the, matter of fact, I was one of the first African Americans to attend John McDonald High School. We integrated that school. That's 67. You know, so to go to show you, it wasn't that long ago that things weren't all like they are now, and things could be a lot better, and they are far from where they should be for all that we did then and sacrificed then for us not to be much further along with our accomplishments in this country, but we still have to deal with the same plight of racism, prejudice, segregation. So, you know, I appreciate being there. But growing up in New Orleans, irrespective of the racial tension, New Orleans is a wonderful place to grow up because there was always so much to do, so many places to go. Always, you got the French Quarter, you got the Marigny, you have Tremé, you can go to the Seventh Ward, you go down. You can just do so many things constantly. There never was a dull moment when you lived in New Orleans.
Good. And what would be some of your fondest memories growing up in New Orleans?
Hanging out with my friend Colin Carrier, and he and I were the best of buds, and he and I would do we did everything together. We did football, basketball, whatever. You know, we were the team. We were the quarterback and the receiver on all our gatherings and everything. But more importantly, he and I would go to the French Quarter, and you know, that it sounds so crazy now, but we used to catch watermelons being delivered to the what is that called? Yeah, I forgot the name of that thing. The open market down there,
Oh,
the
the
French
French
market.
market.
The French market. It was being delivered to the French market, and you know, when they unload the trucks, they pay you to help unload it. The driver would. So you know, you get like $5 to unload a whole truck. That's some real change in 1963, 64. You know, $5 can do a whole lot of damage, and we had a
Right.
lot of fun making that. Then just working in the quarter, all total. I started working in the French Quarter at about 13, 14 years old. I had a paper route. I had the paper route for the quarter. I was fortunate enough that the guy who had the route, the adult who had the distribution, happened to be my fifth grade, sixth grade teacher. And so, you know, he hooked the brother up and got me a little job, and I was going to work 4 o'clock in the morning. I had to be at school for 6 for track practice, but at 4 o'clock in the morning, we out throwing papers in the French Quarter, and some folk just making it home.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it used to be quite interesting. Quite interesting.
So let's talk about these. You talked a little bit about the civil rights movement, and you know, it's kind of really starting to kick off more so in New Orleans in the '60s. The racial tensions of the '60s, the '70s, and even now in the late 2000s, 2020s. How was that growing up then, when you had so many people that were like of a melting pot of ethnicities and all of that stuff in New Orleans? So how could you really kind of not all get along?
It was that, and that's what I was about to address, the fact that we never really had that kind of issue as much as they were in other communities because of the separation and the segregation to certain segments of the community or the city where they had to live, where we lived all over everywhere. But, and you know, many of the African Americans, the blacks in New Orleans, at that time, you wouldn't know if they were white or black,
right?
Unless you knew their people. And so they, you know, they were everywhere, and they would always share us. But the race relationship there was unique in the fact that the French colonized that place years ago, and same philosophy and socialization of the French is permeated throughout the generations, and it continued to be a part of the fiber of New Orleans, where, you know, folk got along. Did they like each other? I don't know if that was the case, but they got along. You know, they knew. So the other community knew that you couldn't act too crazy with African Americans,
right?
Because we would retaliate. You know, you'd have to deal with us, okay? And we were a little different than a lot of other places. But on the other hand, we still had that hard situation of those diehard racists who would do the oh, there I am. All right, they would do the damage they would try to perpetrate through the police department.
Right.
And policemen were, oh my God, they were awful back then. You know, yeah. So. And
you talked about policemen, and let's segue into that. You became a policeman.
Yeah.
So how was that, like, trying to police your own people? I know, like you said, with the racial tensions, you know, people calling you the pig, the fuzz, all that stuff. How did you kind of balance that, even though you were from the area and were well known through sports and school? How did you balance being able to connect with the community and actually police the community?
Well, you had to grow up in the community. You know, growing up in the community, I knew everybody with anybody. And so, you know, we had some mutual understandings on some things. But the other piece of that is, oh, you got to treat a person. Listen, policing isn't difficult. The policemen make it difficult. Okay, their attitude, the way they interact with other citizens, the way they see people as less than human. Those things is what create the problems that we have today. It used to be required that the police officers lived in the community in which they policed.
Right.
And that way, because you know the folk know you, and you don't go in there acting ridiculous. But, you know, that didn't always keep people from losing their minds and doing things they shouldn't have. But if you know people, you probably can tell what's going on and what the issue is, and then they respect your opinion, and you go in and handle your business and let them know you can handle your business. Now we can do this. The expression was then, we can do this thing like gentlemen, or we can go gangster style. However you want to do this, man. You can get in this car and go ahead, or either after you leave the hospital, you can go to jail.
Right. So but even with that, like there seems to be now with a black, like you have Black Lives Matter movements, you have a lot of your, NAACP and a lot of voter suppression and things like that. So in the 60s and the 70s, when you have the community law enforcement, as well as just people that are of the community, your activists, how were you able to kind of just move forward to say, I want to bridge the gap. I want to be the conduit that gets people into knowing about your community, being involved in your community, being involved in your local church?
Well, at the time, church was not an agenda of mine. Okay, I mean, I grew up in church, of course, but they say when you get grown enough and big enough to do anything you want to do, you don't go back. So I wasn't going to church at that particular junction of my life. But getting to your question, I'm not going to sit and have you assume or think that I'm implying that everything was peachy creams and everything went smooth and there was no issue. Oh, there was lots of issues, but many of them were not resolved. Okay, and that's why they're still around now. But when you're raising generations of bigots and prejudiced and racist individuals, you get one group straight and then another group comes along. And
right.
Get one group straight and another group comes along. So it's just a cycle. So, you're in a constant struggle for that. But when my goal was to become a police officer was after I thought I was going to be a priest. And I found that I was not called to be a priest. Okay. Maybe called a ministry, but not in that way. Okay. And so I wanted to do community service. I wanted to give. And so and I saw what was going on with the people in the community and how they were being treated and mistreated. And I thought that being in law enforcement was the way that I could help bring some dignity and some trust and some humanity back into our community from the atrocities that we're watching, these guys coming with dogs and clubs and stuff and beating brothers up and carrying on just for no reason because they had a little authority. I mean, my thing was, no, I can probably make something better happen than that.
And so, at what point did you decide, okay, I'm ready to go to the next level in law enforcement? Because you started out with NOPD, and then you kind of expanded into other agencies. So, with expanding into other agencies, how did you feel you were able to fulfill the need of your community being in a broader sense?
In a broader sense, it's because I was able to interact with people on different levels who have different agendas, different socialization, and different ways of life. And being able to share and interpret that, plus understand the greater mission for the nation and the country. At the time, I was sold out and bought out, and not really sold out, but I had bought the line. So I'm trying to be a good American, and everything. And to find out America didn't want to necessarily be that good.
Right.
But I wanted to be a good American and wanted to help my folk. And so I wanted to do what I could do to help them. Now, all the other areas that I worked, we won't discuss, but it was just an interesting journey, to be able to help people. And now that's my thing. That's my goal. That's what I deal with, just trying to help people. I often tell individuals I can do more for you than I can do for myself, and that's just the way I feel. I don't, if you have an issue, a problem, a situation, I want to try to help resolve it and fix it, or either get you to the source that can. I think we are better as repositories of information, and resources that people who come looking for help, not necessarily you give them a sermon or tell them about why they're in the condition they're in, and they just want, can you help me?
Right.
And then so you get, and you can't help anyone when you don't know who has the help.
Yes.
And I've always been one who, I am not good at talking to secretaries, which I don't have a problem with, executive assistants and all, but I rather talk to the boss, and let me talk to the manager, let me talk to the director, let me talk to the executive president, whoever's in charge. Let me have a direct line or either a way to contact them personally.
Right.
Then I can get some things resolved, because some things die on the secretary desk, and
That's true.
or either the assistant desk. And so my thing is to cut through all of that. I call who's in charge, tell them the situation I have, and then they address it, and people are helped. And the only way you can do that is if you're willing to be out there amongst the people, out there with those who make decisions. Because I heard a saying once that stuck with me, and has stuck with me forever, and that is, decisions are made by those that show up.
Yes.
If you're not there, you can't make a decision. All right, and that's one of our issues for our community, that we don't show up. We react, but we don't show up. When you can sit at the table and make the plan rather than reacting to the plan, and that's what I've always wanted to try to be a part of. Making things happen rather than reacting to. Affected by the plan made for somebody else.
Right.
So if you're making some plans, then you can say something. And if you vote, that means you're willing to help make the plan.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, let's pivot a little bit.
We're pivoting a lot. You moving away. We got to stay somewhere.
Listen, I'm trying. Listen, there's a lot to cover. Okay.
I know. May I have a sip of water? It wouldn't be. You wouldn't be insulted by it.
No. Drink your water. Drink your water, Diddy. Welcome, everybody. This is season 6. Yes, count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of Touch Taste Thursday. Welcome, everybody. I am Rebecca with a K, your host of Touch Taste Thursday by Gene Ellen Home and Lifestyle Collection. And today, my guest for season 6, episode 1 is my daddy, also known as Diddy. I'll tell y'all a story about Diddy. So I had a coworker. She was from Arkansas, and every day she would call her dad, and she'd be like, "Oh, Diddy, you're so funny, Diddy. This is so funny, Diddy. Oh, Diddy." And so I just started saying that, so now I just call him my Diddy, but that's my daddy.
And
do you go by doctor?
And you picked up her accent, but go on.
No, I don't.
Go ahead.
Do you go by Dr. Brumfield or Presiding Elder Brumfield? Doesn't matter.
I go by Elder Brumfield.
Oh. Okay, Elder Brumfield. So our guest for season 6, episode 1 is Elder Brumfield, also known as Diddy. So we talked about him growing up in New Orleans. We've covered a little bit about his law enforcement experiences and why he went into law enforcement. So now we are going to pivot a bit from the community activism in law enforcement and helping people and being a problem solver to ministry. Like, how did that flow happen? Like, how did you go from being boots on the ground to now you're the pastor? Everybody knows the minister.
Yes, but ministry and law enforcement is basically off the same tree, same type of fruit. It's community service. It's giving service to the people. Police officers are supposed to be public service agents. All right, they're supposed to be there to aid and assist the public. Well, so is the church. That's the purpose of the church. And if the church is not meeting the needs of the people, it's not serving the good of the community, the church, it's not to be a social club.
Right.
It's to be a place where people of faith socialize, but also strategize. And my thing is that you should have an agenda and a purpose. Well, thing about churches, and I'm way ahead of what you asked. But
It's okay.
churches are planted by the Lord. Churches are not just, people say, well, we founded this and founded that and put it here and we chose it. Some places that the Lord has chosen to place a body of faith, a congregation, people of Christ, of God. It can be of any faith, but if it's a church that's legitimate, it's going to be about serving people.
Absolutely. So why ministry? Why would you give up or retire or decide, you know what, I don't want to be the police anymore?
It was that I was to be a minister all the time. Like I said, I was very young when I thought I was going to be a priest. Okay. I was 14, 15, 13, going to Catholic school and everything. I was regimented and I just thought that was a natural progression because I had that feeling. And, I had preaching in my roots, but I didn't really understand it. It was a genetic thing because my grandfather was a minister, and, but my uncle's a minister and my other uncle's a minister. I mean, I never really gave it much thought. And then when I chose not to do that, be the ministry, the public service, being able to do it through law enforcement just seemed to be the right way to go. And I had been involved with it since the junior police was a thing that I was a part of long before they had this explorers piece now that they do now.
Okay, well, that's where the kids can go and kind of
work with police
shadow.
officers, work and shadow and do those kind of. And so it was called a junior police program then. And we used to be in charge of bike licenses. In New Orleans, the bicycles had to have a license plate. And and so we would be the ones handling the license plates for the bicycle on St. Philip and Durgeois. And that's where the district was that we did our thing. And so from there, I was involved and I was, I understood and everything from that point and throughout the rest of my life. And, I was on it. So then when I became old enough, it just seems a logical progression. But then after serving through that, the Lord thought that I was worthy to be called to divine ministry. And so I made that transition, not overnight, mind you. It's been a journey, but it took a minute for me to really get started. You go through a lot of. It's not an overnight thing.
Right.
Like the Paul piece, where he got knocked down and blinded and had to go and seek redemption. I mean, yeah.
So obviously you're born and raised AME, and so for those of us that are not familiar with AME, that stands for African Methodist Episcopal.
Correct.
And when I say I still consider myself AME because that's just in my blood.
Okay.
But when you're, like I said, okay.
I'm not saying anything. I just said okay.
Don't do that. So when you're first starting out in the AME church, you are typically sent to a smaller.
You're talking about as a minister.
As a minister. Oh, okay. Once you're ordained and licensed.
Not even ordained, just licensed.
Okay. So then you're assigned, per se, to what is usually a smaller church, a smaller congregation. In your case, in the early 80s, you were a part of what was called the circuit.
Yes.
So explain to us what is the circuit and your schedule of being a minister or a pastor of circuit churches.
Well, man, you jumped way on in that thing. All right. But first thing, African Methodism, AME. It means that we are African by nature. We've always been African. We were African before it even became fashionable and cliche. We always, from 1787 to this time now, we called ourselves African. And Methodist was our form of worship. And we thought, well, let me say we, our founder, Richard Allen, who had been a slave and earned his freedom and bought his freedom along with his parents and siblings. He saw Methodism as the best vehicle for African Americans. He thought it was something that fit black people with their spirituality as well as their encouragement toward self-help and community engagement, along with education and other type training. And he just thought that would be the best vehicle for the African Americans. And that was in Philadelphia in 1787.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, the church moved, and from there to the west, to the Mississippi, then across the Mississippi to the West Coast. But in any case, one of the churches that was founded at that time, the churches were in Louisiana, were part of the Missouri Conference.
Okay.
All right. And so the bishop would be in St. Louis. He'd be down in Louisiana. And originally it was Louisiana and Arkansas. And then it was Louisiana and Oklahoma and Arkansas.
Okay.
Then they finally settled on Louisiana and Mississippi for the 8th district in the South. And because of the shortage of ministers, many of the churches had two pastors, a pastor over 1, 2, or even 3 churches.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be considered a circuit. And you'd have different cities that you would pastor in because the shortage of a minister. Now, mind you, I began ministry a while before I began ministry before how would I put that? Before I publicly, let me say, acknowledged my call to ministry and everything. I was doing things, working with the pastor and doing things all on the, and in the church. But then I wasn't really in church. Okay? I was just doing stuff.
You was just there.
I was there. But in any case, when I received my first charge, which is assigned by the bishop, because we believe in the Episcopal form of government. That's what the E stands for. And that is, we believe that a person is chosen to oversee the church work in certain regions. And Bishop Frank Curtis Cummings happened to have been the bishop of the time in which I came in. And I came in as what we would have called a licentiate. They licensed me to preach, and unusually chosen, it was just a unique thing they did then. And that's back in, we always talk about the hard days, the old days, but it was back when, it was not a custom to send a licentiate who was just licensed the week before to pastor a church. Okay, and so I was in a unique position to where, I just said to the bishop, I was a little bit more mature than some of my other classmates as well now. So I said to the bishop, I just want to work and whatever. And he said, okay, you want to work? Let's see. And he gave me 2 charges, one outside of Macomb, Mississippi, in a town called Liberty, and another town, small town up near Natchez, no, not Natchez, but up near, above Natchez near Port Gibson, Mississippi, called Crosby. And so I had the Crosby circuit. And the Crosby circuit was me and Jesus. We had a good time together for a minute. But the good thing was that I had a fiancée at the time who was, we were getting ready to get married. And she began to be my travel companion. After one of the churches I went to, the pastor, they was like, well, pastor, we want our pastor to be married. I said, and I got 3 daughters sitting right over there. And I said, well, I tell you what, I have a fiancée. She'll be out here next to my car. I said, no, help me, but it was funny, but yeah, I had the Crosby circuits, I had the 2 churches, and that is a part of the history of the church, circuit riding. In those days, a limited number of qualified clergy caused was that a certain group of pastors would have what they consider a circuit. They would have 3, maybe 4, maybe 15. Like right now, what I'm doing today as an elder, presiding elder, is what the elder did in those days on the circuit.
Okay.
He's right around. So a lot of times, and right now with our schedule, you have what is called a quarterly conference. And that is the elder meets with the church directly every 3 months. Well, in those days, the elder, not a presiding elder, but the elder of the church, wouldn't get back for 3 months. And so that established that tradition.
Gotcha. Wow. Do you think that the way the AME church, or even just my generation or the younger generation, instead of, would they be able to do circuits? Like, would they last?
No, y'all too spoiled.
No, y'all too spoiled.
Y'all too spoiled. This generation couldn't handle the rudiments of the rural church.
Okay.
Everybody's been watching church on TV, watching church on Zoom, watching church on Facebook, watching church on what's the other one?
Instagram,
just watching
YouTube,
church, not Instagram, YouTube. And they want a church that's filled with people, full orchestra and choir, and you know, lights and everything, you know, and that's their concept of ministry, you know. But see, what they're looking at is the Sunday production, not the weekly preparation. You see, that stuff don't just happen. You know, that stuff has to be done, and it doesn't happen overnight. You have to work to that level. You know, there's so many nuances in pastoring and dealing with churches that if you skip, and it has happened, it does happen. Individuals skip certain processes where they jump past. Let's use this term. They are playing baseball, the baseball game of life, as I would say. And they might get to first base, but then they want to skip second and third and get right home. You understand? And when you miss second and third, when you get home, you're going to be overwhelmed because you're not going to know what in the world to do with the church, because there's so many things that you learn in the rural church, especially. They will train you, believe me, and they will prepare you for the urban ministry.
Yes.
They will. But there's so many little nuances, little things that happen in churches. Each church has a different personality. The people have a different personality. And we as ministers, we go in and we have to understand the colloquialism, the colloquial traditions, mindsets, and the people. And so you going in, you from New Orleans, and you down in Liberty, Mississippi. I'm going to tell you, give an example. One of my first sermons, man, I was fresh seminarian and everything and thinking I'm smart. And my pastor, who I was an understudy of, you know, interned under, he was brilliant. I mean, just beyond. I mean, he had a room in his house that was wall-to-wall bookshelves, and he read every book. Okay, he's a bad dude, but smooth, really nice, good guy. Dr. Clark, you know him. And he allowed me to learn stuff and do stuff and everything. And then I went out to my little church in the country. And I'm trying to make that little 2-member church into a 2,000-member situation. You know, so I'm doing what what I was accustomed to. So I'm going out there trying to be like Union Bethel. Well, that didn't work. So I'm preaching, and at that time, the hottest new Bible on the market was the Living Bible Paraphrase. All right, and so I'm out there with my Living Bible Paraphrase, and I'm just talking all this great stuff from talking about Tillich and you know, and Bonhoeffer and all this crazy stuff that I've learned. You know, anyway, I'm doing this stuff, and she after worship, Sister Mary Ramsey, love her to death, she came up to me and she said, "Now, Pastor, you sure sound good. But us don't know what you talking about." You know, I know, oh Jesus. He said, "Hey, now you just help us understand what you're saying." I said, "Oh, okay." And so you said, "And could you use the real Bible?"
Not the real Bible.
The real Bible. And of course, she was referencing King James.
Right, right.
And I said, oh, okay. Taught me a valuable lesson. You can't talk beyond where the people are, because you'll lose them, and you never get them. And that's just ridiculous. You go in there trying to impress folks with your knowledge, and no one is said. I had to learn that, you got a good pastor, and I know this is not what we're talking about. A good pastor knows how to prepare a meal for everybody to eat.
Yes. Come on.
When he leaves, but when the people leave, no one should leave hungry. But you got a smorgasbord. You got a buffet. You got to lay it out, and you may not want steak, but you might want a chop, or you might want something else. You may just want salad. You might just want a big dessert. But you got to make sure that the people don't leave hungry.
That part.
Okay, and that's experience. That's where you go to base 2 or 3.
So, with that being said, how do we keep our younger ministers, our younger pastors, when I say younger, I mean, I'm still young, but I mean, that 25 to 55.
Relatively young to me, right? But I'm sorry, what did you say?
Oh, that's so shady. Between 25 and 55, how do we keep those pastors? How do we keep them from either leaving the ministry altogether, or just, like you said, they go from 2 members, 1.5, maybe them plus a family member, to expecting 3,000, and it not happening overnight?
2 things. There's several things under that. That is so, to unpack that. How much time I have?
Ooh,
can I give like 5 minutes on that? Give me 5 minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Try to unpack that in 5 minutes. Because that was a lot. A lot. And first, let me take it systematically. When you speak of young relatively, I mean youthful in the ministry, not youthful in chronological years.
Right.
Am I correct? All right. So you're talking about a little bit. Okay. So you're talking about a young man who's just starting out ministry. Is what your basic question is. Because I know a lot of older brothers who are still what we consider young, youthful guys in ministry, because they only been in it 10, 15 years. That's no time. All right, but so let me go back and say that for young men in their 20s, 30s, 40s,
and women,
don't forget, and women. I mean, young people. When I say men, I mean interchangeably, androgynously. Yeah, we talking about men and women. Come on now, let's
not genetically modified.
No, I'm not dealing with that. Okay, all right, that's ridiculous, man. But I was the dean of the ministerial examination for the AME Church, for Michigan and for Illinois, all right, and Indiana. I mean, and they will tell you that my sons and daughters, I have more daughters than sons in the ministry, but the thing is, I treat everybody equal. I expect the same results out of each, and I don't get into that gender foolishness stuff, like you gotta say Mother God and all that. I'm not. That's womenist theology. I'm not there yet, So I'm old school, and not that I discount it or discredit it. It's just not who I am. Okay.
That's fair.
All right. So then, going back to your original question, young brothers in ministry have to first understand the spirit. They have to be sure they've been called.
Okay.
And if they know that they're certainly, without a doubt, been called, they got to ask God to give them peace of mind.
Okay.
And once they get a peace of mind, then they'll be willing to be taught, okay? And they'll become a Timothy rather than an Absalom. Okay. To be a Timothy means you're willing to be a student, willing to learn, willing to follow the lead of a more senior minister, because they know the ropes and they know all the little nuances and things that you won't know for 20, 30 years, okay? If you ever learn it, if the people were willing to share it, because congregations will do one thing for one person and something else for another. So, you know what I'm saying? It's unique. You got to be a real bad brother or sister to be able to go in and right off the bat, they're all up in love with you. Okay? So if preachers are listening, young ministers are listening, don't be deceived by popularity. It ain't real. But anyway, going on back, the other piece about that is being Absalom-minded is that when they are Absalom-minded, they think that the Lord has already called them to replace the pastor.
No,
You know?
replace the pastor.
Yeah, replace the pastor because they had a couple of good Sundays and the people were really taken with what they had to say, and they folk were, oh Lord, you're ready. We need to get you back as the pastor. You need the reason why you don't preach more often because the pastor just jealous and keeping you back. They buying that foolishness, they're doomed.
Yes.
Because people will mislead you and fool. Listen, read the story. I'm sorry. But anyway, read the story of King Saul. He let that crowd fool him into doing something that was assigned to the priest and cost him everything. He was a man who went to work for 40 years and only was hired for 2. He was fired 38 years, but he went to work every day.
Wow.
Yeah, he was 38 years. Second year of his reign, he lost his job, but the Lord let him show up for 38 years while he raised up somebody else. So what happens is that when you listen to the wrong crowd, you can mess yourself and other generations up.
Listen.
Right? And so, you got to be careful all that. You can really preach. Yeah, okay, fine, but you don't just preaching is one part of it. That's why I don't talk about pastors, preachers. I talk about ministers.
Yes.
Ministry is all encompassing. It has a good minister can preach. Not all ministers are great preachers. And excuse me, it's just like all ministers are not good teachers. Excuse me for that. But you have to know your gift.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that every minister, everyone who's a minister, God has given a degree of grace, all right, where you can preach and pray and sing and you can do all that stuff.
So when you have people that, like you said, they've been hyped up because they may have they just had a very good Sunday. The Spirit fell upon them and they were able to preach, pray, and prophesy. Like I always say, preach, pray, and prophesy.
Right.
And they get hyped up or they feed into the hype. And they go out there and they start these ministries or they leave the covering that they're under and they go and start these ministries and it is a disaster after 6 months. How do you bring them back into the fold, or is there a period of time where they have to sit out before they come back into the fold?
Well, thank God we don't have that problem in the Methodist Church because the way we operate, all right? Congregational churches have that issue where a group of people can decide, all right? And in the Episcopal Church is a bishop and the elders who sit in consultation on that, all right? But again, we have what is called a ministerial efficiency committee because we have a discipline. And if you do anything contrary to the discipline, you are referred to the committee, and the committee can take you out of that church, or that committee can place you back in that church or recommend that you be reassigned. But mostly it's the bishop along with the officers of the church that are determine the longevity of a pastor. Okay, but then when you have a brother in trouble, then you have to deal with, is he Timothy or is he Absalom?
Okay.
Is he thinking that he's already past where his daddy is? That he could do better than, vote for me, I'll set you free. You know what I'm saying? I'm better than my daddy. You don't need him.
Right.
I got you. You know, you don't even know what time it is anyway. And or you like David, when he had a chance to do Saul in, and Saul thrown a spear at him and did everything he could to take him out.
Right.
And yet David wouldn't touch him. He wouldn't even let his aide touch him. He said, no, touch not God's anointed.
Right.
And do his prophet no harm. He said, no, you can't, no. As bad as Saul was to me, he's still God's man. All right? And so, you have to have persons who have that kind of understanding that the pastor has been set here by the Lord, supposedly, and sometimes, you congregate, you're going to get folk they won't, but whatever. But supposedly, they are set by the Lord. And when the Lord places a person there, who are you to take them out? Who are we to say that they're not fit to be there? Who are we to give judgment on that? The Lord said, I will send you pastors after my own heart. Okay? And so sometimes you may not like the package, but the substance is there. You understand? Because a lot of folk get into popularity and good looks and, skill sets where you can tune up and hoop a little bit and holler 2-3 times and you look good in your clothes and doing, and they miss all the real stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because they caught up in image. But then I remember Kate Mouse saying, looking good about 70% of it, but I don't know about that. But the truth is, though, that a lot of young brothers have messed themselves up, and some people are going out thinking they were called to start something that the Lord didn't. The Lord, listen, when Legion, and we move on, when Legion was cleaned from his demons, all right, he wanted to follow Jesus. Jesus said, brother, you go back. You weren't clean to follow me. He thought he was called a priest. He said, I got a testimony. I got to tell this thing. And he said, no, go back and show your folk. Let them know that God can do anything, And I preached that I did that in a conference of ministers talking about, you have to understand, did he have a calling or a crisis? You understand? He had a crisis.
Yes.
He didn't have a calling. You know what I'm saying? And he was delivered from his crisis, but he wasn't called to go and be a disciple. And that's what some of the young brothers got to learn. But many of them are impatient. They want it now. I want it now. I could do that. I can do it. If Jamal can do it, I can have it. I can do that kind of thing. They don't know how long and what Jamal been, what he's gone through, what it's costing him, what it takes. They don't know that. They just see the finished product. I'm
glad you brought that up. That's going to move into our next question. And not just directly Dr. Bryant, but we have the church has now become where your pastor is now an influencer, a brand. Like the pastor has become the face of the church. And so as one that's not a believer and they see that, they see, the glitz, the glam, the cameras, like you said, just the production of church. How do you keep their attention and bring them in and also offer them Jesus in the same time of saying, you don't have to be poor as a Christian. God does not want you to be poor. God does not want you to, have to grovel and beg and borrow. It's okay to live a comfortable, fulfilled life. How do you bring all of that home so that it makes sense to a non-believer?
First thing, let's put things in perspective. I have an opinion on that. I'm not going to give you my opinion on that because you are a syndicated group and you have other folk listening. But what I'm going to say is this. I'm trying to get this stable. I'm sorry for all the movement. I don't normally do this, but I was not set for this tonight. I had another
wait a minute. We talked about this.
I know that. That's my point. I wasn't set for it. You told me I am going to do this or either I'm going to have to, but I did. But no, I'm joking. But a minister is a professional, like any professional in the community. I mean, a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor. Many of them don't spend as many years in school as anyone. They all have, you go all the way to the doctor of ministry degree. You've been in school 14 years. I mean, you've been in school 16 years. I'm sorry, 16 years. Okay, 16 years is a long time to go to school to be underpaid. Okay, and so he's a professional, so he's to be paid a professional salary. But if the church can't afford it and you feel you've been called to ministry, you work it out with that congregation on what they can really do, and you be willing to accept that. You can't get mad if they don't get it. But the thing is, the money and the resources and the salaries are all predicated upon you being able to build the church. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
If you can get the people in, the people will take care of you. You know, but if ain't nobody coming but your cousin, your mama, your niece, and 2 or 3 children, you know,
Right, sure.
yeah, children, not children, children.
Sure. Got it.
But when you have them, you can't expect to live a life of a upper middle class individual, all right? Unless you're bivocational. Now, if you got another job, you can do what you want to do. You can spend what you want to spend, living the way you want to live.
Right.
Okay. But in many instances, we appear that, let me say it this way. God has never told anyone to be destitute, poor, and hungry. Okay? That's not the God I serve.
Right.
Okay? The God I serve is a God who can do all things.
Come on.
And if you serve him properly, you not only will he give you desires of his heart, but he'll even give you the desire of your heart. I mean, you can get a couple of things. Now, he's going to take care of all your needs. But when he starts giving you some of your wants, you understand, that's a whole nother level.
You better insert a shout right there.
Hey, that's a person who has been grinding. Yes. You understand what I'm saying? You putting it in, and because of it, God is blessing you for what you're doing for the kingdom. Right. But if you're only building a platform for yourself,
right?
You know, you're nothing but
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, the sound went out. The sound is out. I don't hear you. Hold, everyone. It was getting real good. So that lets us know we were right on target. In the meantime, let's pivot for a second. I'm going to welcome you all to Season 6, Episode 1 of Touch Taste Thursday. I am Rebecca with a K, your host, your curator of the Jean Ellen Home and Lifestyle Collection. Also, our products. Wait, what? Oh, we got Razzle Dazzle on deck.
Razzle Dazzle.
Our episode tonight is sponsored by Ophelia's Creole Razzle Dazzle. We have the original spice and the extra spicy Dazzle. So you can go to shop.jeanellencollection.com. I tried to pin in our comments and it wouldn't let me pin in the comments. But nonetheless, you know to go to my webpage, which is jeanellencollection.com. You can go to my Instagram, my Facebook. Just Google me. I'm Googleable. Googleable.
Yeah, Googleable.
I'm Googleable. Either way you go, you can get your Razzle Dazzle today. Again, we have the spicier Dazzle you guys have been asking for. It is here. It is available. And, of course, we have the original spice. So we are going to jump back into our conversation with my daddy, Dr. Presiding Elder Robert Brumfield. He was talking about ministry and the purpose of being ministry, like God does not want you to be broke. It's That's okay right. for your pastor to have a nice car and live in a nice house.
Yeah. I mean, wait a minute. Wait a second. Is it all right for you to drive in a nice car and live in a nice house? So why wouldn't it be nice? Okay, for the pastor. I don't understand it. Now, there's a problem for me if the pastor's the only one living in a nice house. There's a problem for me when the pastor's the only one driving a new car.
Right.
You know, it's a problem for me when all of my members are catching the bus, you know what I'm saying, and I'm rolling down the street in a luxury ride. Okay? I remember when I first got my no, it wouldn't be true if I said it that way. I had a luxury car. I've always had fine cars, even before ministry. But when I began ministry, I started, I gave up everything, man. When I get, don't get me emotional now.
Oh, please don't. Because, you know, we cry babies.
Yeah. But when I went in the ministry, I gave up everything. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I sold out. All right? I just focused on nothing else but doing that. And so we had some struggle years. All right? But then when the blessings came for faithfulness, God put me in this big, in those days, it was a major ride. It was a Grand Marquis. Had a
Woo!
Grand Marquis. You
Come on,
you was
Lincoln.
a munchkin then. You was a munchkin. Yeah, it was a major.
That brown
And
car?
yeah, the brown car.
The
Right.
brown one. We had that car a
Yeah.
long time too.
Well, I had it a minute, but when I got it brand new, it was on the truck, and I went to the car dealership and saw it on the truck, walked around the truck, claimed in the name of Jesus, and went there, didn't have a dime, and told the man that, the Lord was going to give me that car. My mother-in-law blessed me. Gloria was something else. She blessed me, and I went to get me a car. But in any case, that was a luxury car. But I used that car like a bus. Man, I used to go pick up my choir. I was at this church. We didn't have a choir. And I went and picked up all the young people I knew. Even my sister-in-law and my brother, Derek and Uncle Gennell, they were all in the choir. We were hot. You mean hot? And they could really sing. And my drummer, I go pick up my drummer, and I go pick up my director, my musician. He was in the Air Force. Okay. And crazy Robert Sullivan. And I had the drummer, and I used to have the drums. We'd have everybody in the choir in the car. All right. Yeah, I mean, and I get to church time enough for them to get out, get set up, and everything like that. And but I used it for church. It was a nice car, I mean, it was upholstered in those days with no leather. I didn't do that. It was upholstered. Man, shoot. We would go there. There'd be so many folk in that car, you couldn't even see out the mirrors. But I'd get to church and they'd praise the Lord. The Lord blessed, and eventually I moved on from there to the other things I had in other churches. Okay, but as I was speaking of earlier, is that young brothers who are in ministry today don't quite understand or comprehend that you can't get what you don't raise. That's one piece. If you're not putting the time in and raise, people will take care of you. People will give you. Even people who are struggling somehow when it comes to the church, they'll give if the church meets their needs. It could be emotional, it could be psychologically, spiritually, who knows, but if you meet their need, people will bless the house. And when they bless the house, they're going to bless the angel of the house. And we've always been blessed, and that's been my philosophy. But then when you talk, some of these folk believe that a lot of guys pimp the church, as they say. They're using the church for their own gain. And that is true in some instances. I'm not going to say it's not. It is there, it's real, man. They see ministry. Guys in school with me, they were deciding on what they're going to do with these degrees. Some say, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they say, well, I believe I'm going to go into ministry. I'm not thinking like, what? I say, man, those cats make 6 to 7 figures a year. We can go, you understand? There's a lot of those out there. Not many African Americans, but there's a lot of them out there who go and study the techniques of preaching and pastoring, and then they come and mess people all up. I mean, it really messed them up bad. Because they haven't been called to ministry.
So when you say they go and they study, that almost kind of leads to my next point about church and theater, church and TV, church and movies. You have a lot of popular shows like We Enjoy the Shy. They have a lot of church scenes, and what's the one from Baltimore with Fame in it? The Wire.
The Wire. All of that.
So you have all of those different shows.
But then you got this other thing on now. What they call it? Evergreen or something? I don't know. Maybe.
Greenleaf has been off for like 3 years now.
No. Well, maybe it is off, but it's on reruns. All right. Whatever it is, it's a mess. But go on.
So then how, again, do you kind of steer that message from TV and movies of church or what people think church is like to what church really is?
Let me answer one question. Brother, is that what, a Gravy 86?
Oh,
What is that?
that's Gabby.
Man, they asking the question, where are the churches for that 6 and 7 figures?
Yes.
They're all over. They're all over. There are a lot of places. Not many in the African American circles.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't referring to African Americans. I'm just saying there are churches out there where the pastors make 7, some even 8 figures a year. All right, it's unbelievable, and they ain't talking no Jesus. All right, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's something else. What were you asking me? I'm sorry.
So then I was asking about, you were mentioning some of your classmates talking about they wanted to go into the ministry for that reason, to make 6, 7, 8 figures. And so the question was, how do you steer those that are still new in Christ or not even quite fully sold out for Christ to know that that is all TV? Church, this is real life. This is church.
The pastor got to be real. The pastor, the messenger. He has to be real. He has to be approachable. He has to be touchable. He has to be personable. You understand? He has to come across to the people that, hey, look, I don't like talking about me. I know, because it ain't about me. But I'm saying, I used to tell my folk, I do the same things that you do. Mm-hmm. I feel the same things you feel. Some Sunday mornings, I'm like, I don't want to go. I didn't want to go. I mean, it's cold, it's snowing. I'm in Detroit, and folks talking about church, and I thought, oh, Jesus. And I had an 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock worship, so that means if I had to be there for 8, I got to get up at 5, 4, 6 to get to the church. And so, man, I'm not trying to do that. But Sunday morning, I don't care what happens, something in me that would be like an alarm clock that I just had to get. I couldn't stay home on Sunday because I had been doing it, and that's the Lord's day.
Right.
You understand? And so I'm going to church, man. And going to church wasn't that hard. All right. But the reality is that ministers come from the lay people. Ministers come from out in the pews with you, where you're sitting. The person next to you may be the next minister. May not be the minister of your church, but he may be the minister of a church. But he just could possibly be the minister of your church. That's what we talk about in the AME church. And that is when members are sending us preachers to examine to the ministry, we're talking about people, and we tell them, you don't send us anybody you wouldn't want to come back to be your pastor. Okay. If you just try to get rid of somebody, that's one thing. But if you really believe they are worthy, for you to give them your blessing, then you ought to be willing for them to come back to you.
What's missing from churches in 2023 of our Lord? What's missing?
I'm sorry, I was reading that thing. What'd you say?
We're going to get to the comments toward the end.
All right, go ahead.
But in 2023, what's missing?
What's missing is genuineness, genuine. That's what I was saying. Being genuine, being open, taking away the facade of church, not pretending that you're holier than anybody else. We all are working toward our salvation. You understand? The minister has to, and it's not because I'm an old man now. I'm saying this. I felt this from the beginning. You can't, my thing is, I'm supposed to help bring you. I'm the shepherd. Right. The shepherd don't send the sheep. He'll bring the sheep. Okay? I got to bring these people to the kingdom. You know what I'm talking about? I can't send them there. I can't say, well, you go to that down the corner, turn right, and you go in that church right there, you're going to have a great time. While you're there. I mean, God didn't tell me to do that. God told me to go out there and fish and bring people in. And so I took in a member at Kroger's one day. We were at the meat counter, and she was at the church Sunday, and I didn't know. She was just visiting. She said, I was visiting. You from Oakland? I said, yes. He said, yeah, you're a minister. Yeah. She said, you know what? Because I had done a call to discipleship, all right? And that's a big difference in call to join the church, all right? And she said, I want to join. I want to be a part. And she said, yeah. And I said, well, she said, well, when can I? And I said, we can do it right now. And I was just, because I had this philosophy, and I mean, how much time we gonna have back?
Just keep talking, Daddy.
Okay, all right. I had this philosophy back when I was in Meridian, Mississippi. I had a brother come to join the church, and I was hung up in orthodoxy, all right, traditionalism. And we used to baptize stuff on third Sunday. That was the day, third Sunday. I told him, come back third Sunday, I'm going to baptize you. This was first week. Between the first Sunday and the third Sunday, the brother was dead.
Wow.
I swore to God, from that moment on, I would never hesitate to take somebody and lead them to Christ. Wherever we are, whatever day it is, I don't care. All right. And even till the now, I've stayed the same way. So I'm in Kroger's, and the lady wanted to join the church. So we started having church right there. And before I realized it, half of everybody around there joined in. I was there, all the people in the store, in Kroger's, is celebrating this lady joining church.
Wow.
It was just wow. Still a member of the church.
Okay.
That's it's just unbelievable. That was wild. But that's my philosophy for ministry. All right. That's my philosophy for ministry. Ministry is wherever it is. It's not just in the building. And that's what this generation has to understand. But more importantly, the ministers have to make them be inspired to feel that way. You know, a lot of folk brag on their churches because they got a great choir. They brag on their church because they got a great pastor. They got to brag on their church because they got a great facility. I mean, bragging on your church because you have a great spirit. Yeah. Man, that, you know, people feel good. In Oak Grove, we used to have an informal fellowship. That is, when I identify and acknowledge visitors, then we hug everybody. Then we go around and hug everybody in the church. Yeah. Everybody love on each other. Okay? And people found people who didn't even know were members of the church. You know what I'm saying? Because then my 8 and 11 o'clock used to happen all the time, where folk would meet each other in the community. And they say, oh, yeah, well, what church you go to? Well, I go to, yeah, but there was a difference between the 8 and the 11 o'clock crowd. Exactly. There was a different dynamic in both groups. And they were like, wow, I didn't know that until you find that happens. But my thing is, I teach a lesson that I recommend all you young preachers, if you're listening. Come on, young preachers. If you're listening, please get this book. Okay. It's called A Church Worth Getting Up For.
Church Worth Getting Up For.
Yeah, church worth getting up for. There's some churches you think about getting up and you just turn over and color cover back up. All right. But you know, hey, where you getting up? I'm going over there, gonna do the same old stuff. You know, just somebody say I'm an 8 a.m. baby. Yeah. No, the 8 a.m. used to be a lot of adults in there, man. It was a grown folk church. They used to rock and sock them up in there, boy. But anyway, as I was saying, what about talking about?
About a church worth getting up for.
Church worth getting up for. I think that's I know the guy's name. I'm sorry, I know his name. But anyway, within the book, it talks about the fact of the church's dynamic and how you grow a church and how you implement programs and how, if you don't have, one of the things that I did all my life, and one of the things I did which complimented, I was so happy when I saw it in the book, it said that if you don't have the resources and the church across the street has it, why not partner? Okay. And so my thing is, if you know the story in the Grove, I partnered with the Presbyterians, the Apostolic, with the Kojic, with the Baptists. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we had a coalition. All of us were together. And, you know, so what we did was we applied for a grant, educational grant from this foundation here that gives away all this good money. And, but today there's no granting to one individual church. You need to form a group, form a consortium. You know, 5 of y'all can get money from the federal government. Now, what we did was one did the tutoring, one did the creative arts, one did dance and stuff of that nature. Another did, I mean, we all had specialties. Right. that we did, that each kid in each of our programs would go to each of these churches eventually, to be a part of the program. It worked so very well, because I can't do all of it.
Exactly.
I didn't have the resources to do all of it. All right. And other ones didn't have the resources to do some stuff, but they could do what they could do.
Right.
And that's the way you build church congregations. Folk want to be a part of something that's doing something.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned grants and government funding. That's actually on my list of questions. Why are some people afraid to accept government funding for their churches? I've heard
because they don't want to keep records.
I've heard different responses that they don't want to have to follow the regulations and the guidelines, or they don't keep records. I want my daddy's records.
That's all you need to do a federal grant, state grant, city grant. You just got to keep your records straight. Show the folk where the money going. Show them what you're spending the money on, and you got no problem. Okay. I personally think that churches don't really realize that you can do programs without a 501c3. A 501c3 only says that you want to get money from the federal government.
Come on.
All right?
Okay.
That's the only thing it's for. It ain't for all the other stuff you may do. The city won't give you this, or the state won't give you that. 501c3 is for federal government being able to check and see what you're doing with the money you're getting from them. Okay? And there's a 501A, a 508A. I forgot the number. I've been out of pastoring for a minute. I forget it. But there's a number for a profit, right? For profit church. For profit church. So by nature and virtue that a church call themselves a religious organization, they automatically are tax-free. Gotcha. The 501c3 do not make you tax-free. It makes you tax-exempt.
Right.
Being a church makes you tax-free.
Okay.
Right? Are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So those who are afraid, and please forgive me, I'm being facetious. I'm saying I'm clowning, but I'm gonna be serious. People who are afraid of 501c3s need not be afraid if they do the things they're supposed to do. Yes, there are regulations, but there are regulations just being a member of the church, isn't there?
That's what I was told.
Okay.
That's what I was told. Okay. So the next question I have leading into about government funding as well as grants, you talked about building community. How can you build community to bridge the gap between the old guard and the new guard? And when I say the old guard, I mean,
I know what you mean.
Like you and some of your peers. So like the Bishop Sheards and the Bishop Reeds and, the older statesmen, the elder statesmen of the church, bridging the gap to the younger, the up and comings, the Keon Hendersons and I don't know everybody's name, my pastors. How do you bridge that gap without it seeming like I'm trying to take over?
Very good question. I understand what you're saying. Okay. Very good question. One of the things that you have to contend with is that you got to make sure that the young brothers that you're trying to reach for are willing to receive. Okay. Some cats are not willing to receive. They're like, I already know, I ain't trying to go there. That's old. That don't work no more. You don't know what you're talking about. We don't roll like that. That's not the way we flow. Okay, fine. Go on, do your thing. And so it's hard to pass this stuff on to folk who don't want it. All right. But then when you find brothers who understand the historicity and understand the Africanness of ministry, they understand that it's communal and that we understand together. And so what I pass down to you, you pass it down to somebody else, and then they pass it to somebody else. But right now, these guys thinking they're going to build and develop their own thing that's never been done before. That's not true. There's nothing new under the sun. Right. It's just a different version. All right? The first Model T Ford don't look like the current Ford, but it's still a Ford. Correct. It's still a Ford. All right. And so it doesn't change that. It doesn't change that ministry is ministry and God's word is God's word. Okay. You might have a different way of presenting it, but it's the same word. And it's been presented before. And what you thinking is all fresh and fly, we did 35 years ago. Okay.
Right.
So that's cool and that's good. I don't fault the brothers for that. But they have to be willing, and so are some of the sages, some of the older brothers like me. They have to be willing to sit down with these brothers and just let's talk. Let's just talk, you know. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm
Right.
trying to share with you the wisdom of the years that I've had and the mistakes I made. So you don't have to make them same mistakes. Because a lot of stuff I did just I did hitting and missing. You know what I'm talking
Right.
about? There was no template for what we were doing in the 70s and 80s. There was no template for the neo-Pentecostal movement. Just happened. You know, it was no transition from orthodoxy and traditionalism and high church, so to speak. There was no, you know, it was just a move of the spirit.
Yes.
And bam, there it was. Okay. And you had to be willing to embrace it, understand it, and be able to handle it, or it didn't work too well for you. All right. So you have to be willing to do that. And but there's not really a bridge between my generation and the younger generations of ministry.
Right.
You know, brothers, if you call the ministry, ministry is ministry. And those who call it the ministry, there's never a problem. It's those who want to do ministry where the problem lies, if you caught that.
I don't want to do ministry.
Yeah, folks want to do ministry. They ain't even called to it, but they want to do it. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I know a few.
And so that's why they're having problems. You know? But those who are called to it have somebody they can call and talk to.
Yes.
So this is the loneliest profession there is. Because usually, you know, a lot of brothers are in competition with each other or something of that nature. But, you know, you need somebody to talk to, man. Listen, dealing with people's souls and their problems and issues, man, you need some help to talk about that stuff, man. Get you. Somebody asked a good question, Becky. Man, I thought that question. The question said, "What was it like to grow up as a PK?"
We'll get to that at the end. I gotta keep working. Come on. So you just mentioned about having someone to talk to, and you know, dealing with people's souls, and just being able to show up every Sunday, just be present in the moment. And so it's kind of a twofold question. The first question is now we are starting to see a lot of our ministry leaders talking about God and a therapist. You know, they believe in God and they believe in the couch. We also have a lot of people that are still afraid of that stigma of I'm seeing a therapist. How do we move forward in 2023 to get the mental health help that we need without it being such a thing of, well, I thought you believe in Christ. I believe God. And why aren't you trusting in God for your issue? How do you connect that to say it's okay?
Well, where does medicine come from? Where does the practice of medicine derive?
Okay.
According to historians and anthropologists, medicine and the practice of medicine started with black people. All right, long before Hippocrates.
Okay.
Long before he even thought that there was such a thing as a scalpel or a stethoscope. I mean, Africans were doing brain surgery back before the Egyptian period of the great empress. I mean, they were doing brain surgery and everything else. So, I mean, medicine has been an African thing from the beginning. Right. But because African Americans' trauma of the Middle Passage has permeated generations. And then the trauma that they encountered with the 400 years of Jim Crow bondage, redneck, white folk ridiculousness, you know, all of that traumatized them. Then you get into this situation with the government and the stuff that's happening with that thing, you know. Then you got the trauma that, so my thing is, we have issues compounding other issues, but then as a God man, a woman of God, you hearing and picking up the load from all the other folk.
Right.
So you taking their stuff on you. All right. So yes, you got to have a way to dispel that stuff. You got to get a way to release that, you know. And they talk about where you can pray your way down. That is true, but there's also a point to where some people need much more than just that. All right. And so that's why you have the professionals who can do that. Now, the thing about it is some counseling is, it can be done if you find a good church and a good pastor trained who can counsel.
Okay.
All right. But it's not counseling, it's spiritual advice. All right. Okay. He can be an advisor, because there's a lot of young brothers and sisters right now who have degrees in TTE, clinical, you know, pastor, working with situations at the local church, with people's various emotional positions and stances, and stance rather. I'm sorry, and you don't need to go to a psychologist, psychiatrist, or anyone of that nature, because you have a qualified counselor at your church. But there are some things that are beyond the professional church counselor, where you need medical help. You bipolar, you understand? That's your problem. You need medication. That's only can come from a psychiatrist. A doctor can write you a prescription. I can't write you a prescription because you salad a day and Nandy Joe tomorrow. I mean,
Nandy Joe.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they have different personalities.
Right.
And that's not put down. What I'm trying to say is, you can't deal with their problem without the proper training, because you don't identify it. All right. And some people, they think, are just disagreeable because they're disagreeable. And some of it is clinical. You know, some of that stuff is clinical problems. And they need to have some professional speak to them. But then if you got a good pastor who can give you good spiritual advice, you know, who can see and who can share with you good spiritual information, and who understand not being egotistical, but being smart enough to know that this is bigger than me, and help them to connect with a professional. I think that's what a church is supposed to be. A church is supposed to be a suppository. It should be a place where, a depository, excuse me, I feel bad, a depository for all of the things that the community would need. They need to have a list, like I used to make a directory of all of the services that are available in the community. And then when people come with a problem, we flip a page, you know where to go. Go here, see them, tell them we sent you. All right. And that's, you know, that's it.
Let's talk about voting. We have a lot of major elections here in Louisiana. Next Saturday is our gubernatorial election. We have just a lot that's coming up.
Forgive me for that, Sean. Forgive me for that. All right, but Sean, big deal. I apologize. But anyway, you were saying, Becky?
Saying about voting. We have voting. We have, like I said, here we have the gubernatorial elections coming up. Then next year we have presidential elections coming up nationwide. How has the church found a way to galvanize people into voting like they did in the 60s, the 70s, even in like the early 2000s when we had, you know, President Obama was running? Like, how can we keep that momentum going without it just being like a photo op?
Education. You see, our problem is we act like firemen. When the bell rings, we respond, and we go out there and we're going to protest, we're going to march, we're going to raise all kind of sand, we're going to get attention. But then after that, we're going back to our house and let the bell ring again, wait till we come back. But we need to be in a constant, you see, Jesse Jackson coined some stuff back in the 70s that he said, you know, you got to have voter education, voter mobilization. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of it, he said you got to have voters agitation. You see, you got to get involved. You got to be a part of making noise when there appears to be no noise being made, because politicians respond to numbers. And so what the church should be about is not only preparing individuals to live in glory, but they got to live right here until they get the glory. And so the only way to live here of any degree is making sure you got good representation. And the way you get good representation is by going out to vote. And the way you get people to vote is you got to tell them what the issues are. You know, you got to be up on Sunday morning while you are talking about Jesus going to heal and bless everybody, and everybody going to leave tomorrow, and they're going to have a yacht and a plane.
Oh, not a yacht. That's my yacht.
They're going to have all that.
Come on.
And that's fine if that's your people. But if your people are people who are struggling and having the world give them the short end of the stick all the time, and I'm being my vernacular is trying to not be too overly, academic, but to
academic.
Say that, but when you want people to respond to issues, you got to make them issues plain. You got Jesus. The Bible says make it plain.
Yeah.
Even a child understand what's going down. And so a lot of folks don't know what they're voting for or voting against or what they need to vote about. And so that's why they don't go to the poll, because they don't know why. There's nothing for me to vote for. Yeah, there is lots of things. And sometimes your vote keeps you from having difficulties. Other times your vote is to put a person who has your interest at heart in place.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of reasons to vote, but sometimes they don't get it. The pastor don't say it.
Wow.
And the pastor certainly can't endorse any candidate.
Correct.
We don't do that. But
Correct.
you can talk about who you supporting. You can say who you support and why. There's nothing illegal against that. And folk worry about that when they got 501c3s. But believe it or not, you can still talk about candidates, even with a 501c3. You say that you're tax exempt, you can't be involved in politics, not involved in having a political program where you are supporting Rebecca for the best radio person in town. No, you can't do that. But you can say that, Rebecca has a pretty good show, and I trust her because we've spoken before. And you can do that. And that's not anything that's going to violate your nonprofit status.
Got it. That's good. Oh, you're on fire today, Diddy.
Well, you asked a question, I'm answering.
Yes. So I want to talk about, it's a hot topic now. It's good though, and I think you're the more qualified out of just about everyone that I know to really delve into this.
That's not true. You know a lot of people, don't you?
But I don't always trust them like I trust you.
Well, so, you trust all my friends. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So there has been on social media this, I don't even want to say it's a phenomenon. It's not even a phenomenon, but where people that are members of fraternity, sorority, Greek or Panhill fraternity, sororities are now denouncing their membership because they feel that, it's not godly, it's not Christian, it's not this, it's not that. Why are people doing that?
Because they're misinterpreting the Bible, and someone who's preaching to them is preaching erroneous doctrine. And that's what I can say to that. Listen, let me ask this. I get in trouble, so I might mess you up when I say this. But back when I was in Baton Rouge, they were just arguing about whether or not they would let riverboats be ported down there for gambling. Okay, and I was one who supported the riverboats coming because they brought jobs and stuff. And my thing was this, folk. I don't have a problem with it. Listen, when you buy a football game ticket and you're hoping Southern beat Jackson State, you're gambling. That's a basic thing. When you basically, it's the same thing. I want my team to win, and I don't want the other team to win. I want to win. Those kind of things. That's entertainment. That's entertainment. When you go down to what all this basketball team named
the Pelicans.
The Pelicans. That's entertainment. Right. It costs you a couple of $100 to go down and watch them. Let alone the Saints and stuff like that. Right. Entertainment. Yeah, but persons go because they have the income or the resources to buy the ticket to go to see what it is they want to observe. Is that right? So then, if you have the money and you have done everything God has required you to do, and you go to the casino or whatever for entertainment, I don't know if that's a sin or not. I don't know. I don't call those things. That's God's thing. All right. But I feel that it can't be a sin if you have the resources to do it. The sin comes when you go there trusting them more than you trust God to try to make your light bill, trying to make your house note, trying to get your car payment. You know, that's where the sin begins, because you there for the reason Lord bless this $50, bless this 25 cents, bless this right now. You know, and God ain't got nothing to do with that foolishness. All right. All right. So I mean, you know, so don't be using preaching doctrine that's not necessary. Now, in the days of Moses, what they're trying to refer to Old Testament law from Levitical position, where Moses had folk who were unruly, like I don't know what. Yeah, the argument is that the crowd that left Egypt with Moses ranged between 500,000 to 5 million. Okay, he had a lot of folk, regardless, and these were all colored folk. Now these black people, remember, this is Egypt, and this is sub-Saharan Africa, and this is before the miscegenation of the Europeans. Okay, so these are all black folk coming out of Egypt on their way. They don't know where. All right. And Moses got all these folk to handle. All right. And they all had issues. So he had to come up with all kind of laws to keep them cats straight. They were, and first thing, they weren't even a nation. They were a group of tribes. They were 12 different groups of people. They all had their own local, colloquial traditions and customs and their own language, all that kind of stuff. And so he had to bring all that stuff together. All right. And he didn't get it together. David, the only one, brought it together. It didn't happen until David became king, all right, that they became together. But before that, they were all 12 individual groups, and they were hard to deal with. Some of them from uptown, some from the Ninth Ward, some of them from Stockmanville, some of them coming from Baton Rouge. I mean, they're from everywhere, you know, and they just acted up, all right? So they had to come up with some way to bring some order. All right. And he brought order to it. Okay. And he brought order to it by giving them a common goal, something common to address, something common to strive for. All right. And that helps settle some of that stuff down. But he still had Bildad and his partner who was raising sand, talking about we could have stayed in Egypt. It was better in Egypt than coming out here. Then Moses had to go and flip and come off the mountain throwing rocks at the folk. They said it was tablets of stone. Throwing tablets of stone down, breaking them up and everything. And some of them wind up losing their lives and losing their blessings because they wanted to do what they wanted to do rather than what God wanted them to do. Because Moses told them, y'all stay here and pray, and I'm going to go up here in the mountain and talk with God, and I'm coming back and tell you what he had got to say. Some folk can't handle that. You know, they need constant reminding rather than, see, some folks can't go from Sunday to Sunday. They gotta go to church Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to get they gotta get a booster shot.
They gotta get recharged.
They recharge. They can't make it 7 days without. They gotta go back and get some more. All right. Then there's some who stay strong all week long till they get back to get refueled, and everybody have a different degree of grace. All right, different degree of spirituality, and so that's understandable and that's fine. But I'm just saying, don't lump everyone in the same boat because everybody not the same. Even in one church, they ain't all the same, not spiritually. And secondly, when you're trying to deal with getting the community connected, if you can get the church connected, one of the things I've been working on for 40 years, is to connect the churches and get them all on one page. Because if all the black churches came together and pooled their resources, they could shut down.
Yeah.
Man, listen, they could lock down. So, churches, many churches. Now, in Detroit, we're dealing with some kind of situation. I can't speak for Louisiana. But in Detroit, on a Sunday morning, on a Monday morning, rather, you're looking at a deposit of somewhere in the neighborhood of about 17, maybe $18 million. All all right,
Yeah.
from the churches.
Right.
You understand? $17 million times 52 weeks. Get to be
Mm-hmm.
some real money.
Yes, it does.
Okay, you know what I'm talking about? And then you take that and invest it properly, and it pays the dividends, and people borrow some of it, and they pay that back. And by the time you know it, that's 70, whatever that number is, that's now 3 times what it was,
Yes.
4 times what it was. I mean, you can make decisions when you got that kind of money in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? You can make decisions when you got that kind of money, and that creates influence. White folk with money respects money. White folk with power respects power. And white folk who running for office respect numbers.
Yes,
You know
that's right.
And if you got the numbers, they coming to see you. They coming to hear what you got to say. May not do nothing you want. They're still gonna come here. Okay. And it gives you access. Unbelievable, man. Listen, there's nothing. When I was pastoring Oak Grove, nobody ran for anything without coming to. I mean, nationally and locally. They came to Detroit. They came by Oak Grove. You know, every presidential candidate that came to Detroit came to Oak Grove. Every senatorial, and you name it, the school board people came to Oak Grove.
Right.
I mean, because I made sure they understood that when I'm coming 3,100 strong with people who vote. You understand? 90% of my congregation was all registered voters. And so I'm talking about real numbers that can sway a vote. You can lose and win a vote with 50 people on a local level. But you talking about 3,000, man, you could shape a major meeting, a major election. And so you take 20, 30, 40 churches with those kinds of numbers, you getting into the thousands, and they will hear you. You hear me? And you go down to City Hall, you go down to the state capitol, they will make room for you to say something.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
Okay. And that's how people are helped. And that's where young people, young adults that is, that's how they can help impact the generation. Because you see, the Bible say they call the old because they know the way, but they call the young because they're strong. You know, they got the energy, they got the strength to go and stand there and raise sand with them folk. You know, I ain't gonna stand there and fuss with them folk. I'm gonna call them on the telephone, tell them I got to tell them, and that's gonna be that. But coming down, standing on, I've done that. I've stood on the picket lines. I've marched. You know, so I've had our house protected with bodyguards because I took white folk on up in Mississippi. I mean, we've been through all that. Yeah, that'd be you unborn. I had to protect your mama. You were a little bitty munchkin running around there acting up. But
I'm still little
bitty. Yeah, y'all little munchkin. But when we got the first black elected supervisor in Lauderdale County, white folk wasn't happy about that. They were very upset, matter of fact. But hey, we had to do what we had to do. Took them to court to get the district. First thing, we had to get the district design. Because in those days, the gerrymandering was so crazy, we filed suit. Mr. Bishop, remember Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop, Marcy Alexander, myself, Charles Young, Charles Johnson, Robert Robert Taylor, and all that. We all went and filed suit to get a majority black district. They wanted to give us a 52% black district. That means that when ain't but 20% of black folk voting, we ain't never gonna win.
Exactly.
You know what I'm talking about? But so we said, all right, we like circle. So they came back with a 65% majority district. We fought against that, and the judge said, nah, he made it 72% black.
Okay.
All right. They was guaranteed to get a black person elected, okay? And they were not happy at all. All right, but that's the way it was. But anyway, going on, you got to be in position to help people, and you can't help them if you don't know anybody. You don't go anywhere. Go to now. Your mom used to fuss about it, but I was everywhere all the time and stuff. But that's how influence is gained. People have to know your relationship. Yes. You don't listen. I could have been one of the biggest donors in the city. still ain't the same as having personal relationship and influence with the people that make decisions.
Come
All
on,
right.
influence.
So when I call them and say, I need this done, or I need you to look at that, bam. You know, they say, when, where, matter of fact, tell them to go see so-and-so. I'm calling them right
Yeah.
now. You know, and then when the people arrive, they get the services they need. And that's what makes, and then the people come back to church praising God. You understand what I'm saying? They
Yeah.
coming back to church saying, look at the Lord, look at it. They won't tell people. They want to testify how the Lord made a way out of no way. When they've been bumping their heads against the wall for 5, 6, 7 years, not knowing which button to push, which way to go, and all of a sudden you make a phone call and open up a way that they've been trying to get through for 5 years. Man, they up in church shouting on Sunday morning like they lost their mind. You know? And folks, my thing is, let them shout until they get tired. You know, like, tell them that shit. Yeah, let them go for it.
Yes.
You know, I ain't in that big a hurry. I'm not in that big a hurry. You know, we need to be preaching right now. No, we need to be praising God right
Yes.
now. You know, so I mean, you know, that kind of stuff.
You know, you again, cause not just because you're my daddy, but you drop a lot of nuggets. Like you are very, very, very.
That's how I teach. That's how I teach.
You just have this way of making it make sense. You have a way of being knowledgeable, making it make sense and relatable, and being able to prove or have it documented that this is who you are. You are that guy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, but that's the way I've always been. That's the way I believe ministry ought to be. That's the way I practice. That's why my Bible school used to be packed up, man. They'd be up in there. But we used to do Bible study a little non-conventional. You know, we more like a Donna Hughes show, all right, or more like a live or Oprah show where I mean I'm dropping stuff and then I'm going to the various people, giving them the mic. All right, talk to me. We were talking about interaction. But my thing was always to give them information that would stimulate thought, make them do homework and research. And while looking for that, they also find something else. And they'll come back and say, guess what? I was looking for that and I ran across this. I said, really? Okay. And that's the intent, getting people more knowledgeable, because the more knowledge they have about the church, the easier it is to pastor. Easier when folk know what the church is, what the church does, you don't have any problem about them doing church. All right. The only people that act up in church is the folk who don't know church.
That part.
All right.
Yes.
All right. That's the ones who act the biggest fool, those who don't know.
I want to circle back a little bit. You talked about being in Meridian, Mississippi, and you talked about, you know, you and the group, the squad, you know, y'all pulled up and was like, hey, this is not fair. We're going to fight for the people. But I have a few notes here of things that are accomplishments that I don't think I know in the moment you knew it was big, but I don't know if you know in 2023 how big it is. You know, organizing the first Martin Luther King Jr. Day in Mississippi, the March on Washington here in Baton Rouge, the first Juneteenth celebration here in the city of Baton Rouge. Like, those are huge.
Okay.
In the early 80s, mid 80s, 90s, those are things that, you know, now in 2023 are starting to kind of gain speed, or now they are history makers. Like, how do you take that and still just be like, just humble about it?
I don't even think about it. It's just something I do. I mean, I just do it. We just do it. You know, there's an issue. We show up for it, we address it, and we move on. I mean, I don't know. I don't even think about that stuff. You know, I mean, my thing is, what else was I supposed to do? I mean, what a minister doing? What are you doing all day long at the office? Doing what? Writing a sermon? It take you a week to write a sermon? Oh, my God. You know, well, I mean, if that's what a person said they're doing every day for 6 days a week, I mean, I prepare my notes. Starting on Monday, I'm dropping this on it, and by Saturday, I got a whole lot of pieces of paper everywhere that I got to try to pull together and remember why I wrote it. Matter of fact, I had to remember what it meant, because I can't even read my own writing by then. It got cold. But I don't let that stop me on during the day. I mean, I could be doing sermon preparation, but then if there's something going on, I show up to it. I go. You know, they'll call me and say, "Can you be at City Hall? Can you be at the state? Can you be at the Union? Can you?" And so I just roll on over there. You know, I'd be there. You know, and then they ask me my opinion, and I tell them. Now the mayor used to have me in what they used to call the kitchen cabinet, the little round table, all the preachers in town. But he used to ask me, and I tell him, you know, what I thought. Well, he didn't like for me to be in that too much, so I stopped going over there pretty much. You know, they wouldn't tell me when they had the meeting. But I didn't want to go anyway because they wouldn't talk about anything.
Oh,
And so you know, that was good. But you know, after the mayor, the governor, you know, the senator, the congressperson, they all, you know, I've always been at the table talking things over with them, setting things in place, and helping to identify the voice of the people, or the little man, the voiceless.
right.
You know, I mean, I could talk about my team, and one of the things that helped my credibility was. With them was I never asked anything for me. You know what I'm saying? I was in position to make all kind of things for me happen. But my thing was, what can you do for these people, for the people? Can you get this for jobs and opportunities and stuff like that? And by me doing that, open up doors for me to do everything else.
Yeah,
you know? The other thing, like, you ain't, and I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you the truth. I like this brother. This brother right here, he ain't asking for nothing. This brother, all right, you know. And those guys, and that's very important, you know, for people to be, because I've been in places where they see a certain minister showing up and they say, "Oh, there comes so and so." You know, hide your wallet and all that kind of stuff like that. You know, yeah. I mean, but who wants to? You know, that's an awful thing. You know, for a person representing the church to have people hating to see you come. You know, no, man. So I came in looking to receive only the resources you can give to me to give the people. All right, and if it's written information, give me that. If it's a phone number, give me that. Whatever that is, you know. Now you can't give me no money. As a matter of fact, I'm going to write you a check. I'm going to give you some money. I'm going to have the church raise you up some nice money when you come and see me. But you ain't giving me no money, because once you give me that money, you have bought me and bought my vote. So no matter what I want to say, doesn't matter no more, because I've already been paid. Okay, and they ain't never gonna hold me like that. You know, I don't care how much money that was, and I've seen some real money.
Come on, real money.
Yeah, I've seen some real money, but I'm not gonna roll like that. I mean, what's the good of it? If you look at 90% of the folk, they all been locked up, investigated, sued, and everything. No, it ain't worth it. You know, it ain't worth it. A good name is better than rubies.
Come on, rubies.
You know? When you can go places and people smile when they see you coming, that's what time it is.
I'm glad you brought that up. So, and some people, I know a lot of, we have a lot of Oak Grovers, a lot of just lifetime AME members, and just a lot of people that love and support the Brumfield family, especially you. They know.
People like me.
I mean, well, you know.
Go ahead.
So some of them, or if not most of them, you know that you have personally met former President Barack Obama and, you know, First Lady Michelle. You've also met former Secretary Clinton, Nelson Mandela, you know, all of those people, like these, like people, not just like little whatever. And is there anyone that you haven't met yet that you would love to meet, or at least be in the room, in the room where it happens with them, like at the table?
And this would be true. This would be true when I say this, and this is not a brag. This is just true. There's no person in this generation living that I've not met. So it would have to be some historic figure. Okay. And because the truth is, I have met everybody who's anybody. All right. But and I don't talk about it. I just do it. But the person I would most want to meet, there are several. But one of the persons I would most want to meet and sit down and have a major discussion with about life, about the world, about the future. I think I would want to be with Frederick Douglass.
Okay.
Yeah, that brother was deep. That brother was brilliant. He was smart. He was unbelievable. I mean, Fred Douglass did more for America than America did for Fred Douglass. he did more for America than anybody. He done more than Bill Gates and with that old crew, all them gazillionaires. He did more because he was the voice of reason.
Yeah.
When this country was about to fall apart. The United States is still standing because of Frederick Douglass. He had Lincoln's ear. And Lincoln listened to him. And it saved this country because the folk that was in Lincoln's ear would have had this thing blown up.
Right.
This would have been a mess. But Douglas kept him, spoke to his better angel.
Gotcha.
And so I would love to have been with Fred Douglas.
Gotcha. So, in our last question before we go to our questions from the chat, earlier on you talked about, well, not earlier on, but a little while ago, you talked about being in position to have basically had major gain for yourself.